All right, it says that we're live now. Does it say that for you?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Welcome back, everybody. It's been a long time since we've done a Bitovi Frontend Training. That's because we've been busy, but we've finally started to get out some good content that we just had to do another training on. That content that we just did is how to make a plugin with DoneJS's plugin generator, which David recently wrote an article for on bitovi.com. I'm really excited about it, and even if you're not using DoneJS, you should be, to build your application, you should still be excited about it because it's still very useful to build any kind of front-end widget that you might want to share, publish to NPM, but share with people who want to use AMD or CommonJS or just script tags. If you want to make sure it's tested and has a nice release script and it gets nice tagged versions with the distributables, kind of everything that we've learned about publishing and authoring a JavaScript library or widget, we've tried to bake into this. So with that, I guess, David, show us how it's done.
Let's see how long this is going to take. Also, it's Julia's birthday. Everybody say happy birthday, Julia.
Happy birthday, Julia.
Oh, thank you.
Cake day, yo.
All right, I am going to share my screen because entire screen. Does that work? Everybody seeing this? Cool. So there's an article on the Bitovi blog about how to do this. We also added it to the guide, so if you see down here, it's creating a plugin. You may not know you can actually click here as well, and you see an overview of all those things. So we have creating a plugin, and what we want to do is create, like Justin said, a plugin that we can share across different module loaders. We're going to create the project on GitHub. We're going to add continuous integration. We are going to potentially publish it to NPM, but we've already done that with this one. It's going to be using Bootstrap, and it's going to use CanJS. So even though you can write plugins without it, this one will use CanJS and Bootstrap, and this is how it looks. I hope this is readable, but basically you just say how you can use it, you import it whichever way you want, and then you can create a stash template with the DoneJS number input, set the min and max, and then you can change that with the plus and minus button, and if you're at the minimum, it's going to be disabled, and if it's at the maximum, it's going to be disabled. So it's pretty straightforward, but it's already a pretty powerful component, and that's pretty easy to use.
So this
Let's
is
keep going.
The JS bin is showing it loading from a script tag.
Yes, actually, that's a good. It is.
How many? How many people do you think? What percentage of people load all their JavaScript from just like a script tag, no build system, not using a module loader? Do you think?
So when DailyJS still was around, it did a survey. I think somebody picked it up too, but I haven't looked at that one. Every year about what developers are using, testing and module loaders and things like that. And it's always very interesting, the results. So with testing, for example, even 2 years ago, more than 50% did not automatically test their JavaScript at all. So I would think more than you think.
Yeah, I would probably bet it's actually, I mean, if you're just saying, if someone who's just loading a script tag and trying to get a widget on the page is a JavaScript developer, then, which they kind of are, I bet it's like 90% of people are probably just using just script tags. I bet it's extremely high.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's get going then. Because we'll make it, in DoneJS and in this plugin, we'll use ES6 modules, which are the future. So you won't even notice, but you will make it available for those 90% that are using script tags as well. So the first step that we have to do is create a new repository. I'm going to create that on my GitHub account. just gonna call it. So we called it DoneJS number input, but because if you want to publish the module to npm, you have to have a unique name, and the DoneJS number input name is already taken because we already published it. So what I suggested is to just use your username for this, and then we just say DoneJS number input. There we go. All right, so.
Hey, David, at least maybe Julia, I'm not seeing your screen being updated.
Yeah, it's frozen right now.
Oh.
GitHub was
There we go.
slow.
Now it's back.
Let me try and reshare. I don't know what's going on.
So the basic step, first step is create a repo for your project.
Can you see? Can everybody see the repo?
Yep.
I hope it's not going to be as laggy for the rest of this hangout. We made a screenshot. So now here it says to clone the folder, the repository down. But the next step is also important. We got to check out DoneJS version. So you need version 0.7, which is the one we just recently released, which has also a couple other nice features. But this is probably one of the bigger ones. You need 0.70, and you initialize it with a DoneJS plugin in that folder. Now, the thing is, I've already done this. If you go into phone number input. So I've already run DoneJS plugin and initialized the plugin. Let's quickly look at it. What this does. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. I already ran that, so I have to add this GitHub repository as a remote instead of initializing it in the clone repository. I hope that makes sense.
So what does the DoneJS plugin do?
This initializes the plugin in the current folder, or you can give it a name too. But you see here, right, it asks you for the project main folder, and a couple other things. Pretty much like the same when you run DoneJS init for an app, but it just creates the plugin folder structure for you. So we'll look at that in a second.
Yeah, it's gonna create all the files so that you can run tests. It's gonna add steel to your dependencies so you can actually load modules with ES6. And it's gonna create a build so it can export your project to all the different formats.
Let's look at that.
Boilerplate.
Let's look at that in a second here, because I already ran this because the installation does take a while. So instead of cloning the repository, I can just say git add remote origin and then copy and paste this so that I can push to my GitHub init. I have to initialize a new GitHub repository too. Git remote add, of course. There we go. All right, so let's look at the folder structure. Unfortunately, I can't make this bigger, but you'll see it created a bunch of files, the plugin in it. So git ignore all the stuff you need, package.json, documentation configuration, a build.js file, a README with already a bunch of documentation on how to use it, so you can just publish it and people can use it right away. A main test folder with a test file, and then our plugin module currently just looks like this. It's kind of super short. It just says, okay, well, this is our plugin. And in the test file, all we do is make sure that this plugin function that we export here is returning that text. Now with that initialized, we can actually, it's already setting up the tests for us.
Before you, what does your package.json look like?
Oh, yeah.
Just gonna ask.
So this is actually a good question because this is also important. Having release scripts is something that's a pain, and we figured out that pain. So basically, if you want to release your plugin in a new version, you just say npm DoneJS release patch minor And major, we're following semantic versioning, or you should in your versioning.
One other cool thing we should mention to people, because I want to come at this from the angle of someone who wants to make something that's not like a CanJS plugin. How is this useful to you? Or not even like you don't want to even super buy into DoneJS. Almost all of DoneJS's commands, other than like the DoneJS plugin, you can actually run with npm run. So when David was just about to show DoneJS, release or whatever, if you check out the scripts folder in your package.json, these are scripts that just run with the normal npm run command. So you can make a release, patch, or minor. It will run all of your, if you look at the pre-version, this is something that npm does. It will run your tests, run the build. It'll actually check out a release branch and commit all your distributables to there, which we'll see. But the big point I want to make is that this is nothing really. You can use npm run for all of this stuff and don't even have to use the DoneJS command past that initial creation of your project.
That's important so that you can, other people can just clone it, run npm test, and see if it works or not without having to install DoneJS.
And the other thing is, what are the dependencies that this installs? For ads.
CanJS, jQuery as the main dependencies. Of course, you can remove those.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of development dependencies, JS and Steel, the
Why
test
is
runner.
CanSSR?
I'm probably an accident.
Okay.
I think that came from the original DoneJS package list because it's using the DoneJS versions that DoneJS comes with, so that you get the same versions. I wanted to run the test, right? You can run the test with npm test, or I'll just use the DoneJS command because we already have it. And it'll fire up Firefox, run our 2 tests, and then say that they both are passing. I can also start the development server like you do with your app. And I can look at those tests. It says on localhost 8080. We look at source test, test.html. So you look at localhost, source test, test.html, and there's our 2 tests that we ran from the command line before. I think that's important that you can develop all of this. And this also works with live reload, so hot module swapping. We talked about that when you develop your app, right? You can live reload your changes. The same thing works here as well. So if you were to change the test, it reruns and fails, and now it runs and passes. I don't know why this is still right. It's probably a little mistake. But you can develop super quick with this hot module swapping, even with your plugins, even if you're not using CanJS. Can you? Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sorry, I have to hop off for a second. My mom delivered flowers, so I have to go pick those up.
Birthday flowers. All right.
I'll be back in 2 seconds.
You can bring them and hold them in frame when you come back.
All right.
I'm here for you, David.
That's good. Always have my back. Okay. So now I created this repository here, right? And we also saw how we can run this with npm test automatically. So all you do for somebody who wants to develop your plugin is you clone down the repository, run npm install, and then you run npm test. And that's exactly what continuous integration does. So in a continuous integration server, what we want to do is whenever we push to GitHub to this repository, we want to automatically run npm test. And the best tool and the most popular tool on GitHub for that is Travis CI. You just use your GitHub account to sign up. Obviously, I'm already signed up. You go to accounts, and there's my.
You normally have to hit the refresh, but yeah, the sync.
Yeah, exactly. So I have to hit the sync from GitHub thing, which is going to take a little while. But I want to enable Travis CI to run my tests automatically. You see here, it created a travis.yml So it says, okay, run my tests in Node.js with the latest version of Node. And then basically Travis knows that it has to run npm install and then npm test to have the test running that we saw before. And this is just for starting a window manager so that we can use Firefox. We made a lot of experience with this. Running in an actual browser is always better than using something like Phantom because it's an actual browser. So this is everything we need to set up Travis CI to run. Now let's see if it showed up. So this one, so I just enable this one. Click here. Oops. It should probably show up eventually if I go back to Travis CI. Now we can actually run our first test by saying git status. So here's all our files. We say git add, and then git. I hope this is big enough, but
It's big enough, I think.
Initial commit with plugin infrastructure.
So to kind of recap, basically the generator produced all of the configuration files and so that it can run the test. It also generated a test and produced the configuration file so Travis can automatically run those tests in Firefox on Travis's servers every time you submit a pull request to your repo.
So this is kind of this idea of what DoneJS does too, right? You don't have to worry about what test runner am I going to use, what CI environment. This is our recommendation. We made many good experiences with that, and we figured all of that stuff out already so that you don't have to. Let's push it. All right, this is our initial commit. Hopefully, somehow, eventually, maybe it'll show up here. If not, I'll just go to, let's go to my name and the number input repository. Oh.
It would be DAFL, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So you see here, it's currently building.
But you can see this on the on GitHub too, right?
We didn't make a pull request. We make that.
But you can see it in the
next
branch if you went to branches typically.
Really?
Yeah.
Didn't know that. Yes, there, pending. So this is pending. This might take a little bit, so we can just go ahead. Let's just assume that it passes. One nice thing is that this badge will update automatically, so you have this cool green badge. So this is what we just did, and now we can actually start do some code. We also already looked at the development mode. So just like in a DoneJS app, we can just add components and models like we're used to. And if I call the component the same as my project name, it'll just make it the top level component because that means my plugin is only this single one component. Let's create this one. The tag name is the same, yeah. Now it asks me to overwrite. Now if you look at this, which makes sense, right? Because we have a test.js and an input.js and a number input MD file already. So we need to say, okay, it's okay to overwrite all of those. And then it created those new files for us with the plugin. If the server is still running? Yes. If I restart the server, if I go to the server here now to that demo page that it just created for our component, this one.
So just to kind of recap what happened is when you're saying, okay, the initial generator just produced a very simple module as kind of the module that you would be exporting, that you'd be sharing, publishing to NPM. And instead, we want to make something a little bit more complex, so we're going to create a CanJS component. So you ran the DoneJS component generator, which is essentially going to say, hey, we're going to transform that module, that one like JavaScript file and test file that was there. We're going to replace all of those with like a component and everything that a component needs. So it'll add styles and a template, a more complex test, a more kind of complex, actual CAN component code So that's why I was asking you to be okay overwriting all of the files that were there. Right?
Yep.
Cool.
So we already see it here, the initialized component on the demo page. And now we just implement the functionality. So I'm going to just copy this because it's easier to look at it in the editor. So we created, if you're familiar with the DoneJS in-depth guide, this is a modeling component, so it has a test file, an HTML file, a markdown file. It has everything in their own files. Stash is the template, and this is our component and view model. And what we want to do is implement the following functionality. Oh, this didn't update. Sorry, this needs to be infinity. So our view model is actually, it's using the define plugin. And it's pretty straightforward. So we have a current value, which is a number. The default is 0. And when we set it, we make sure that if it's higher than the max, we'll just return the max. If it's smaller than min, we'll return the min. And max and min are just two numbers. Max is infinity, but you can set it to whatever you want. The same for the minimum value. And then we just add two view model methods, which increment and decrement the value. Because of this part here, it'll never get past the minimum and maximum value. So this is pretty straightforward. And we can basically just as well, here's our test, which is currently going to break because this message is not being set anymore. Our test just instantiates the view model. Let's look at this here. It's much nicer to look at. Our test loads this view model, instantiates it, and then makes sure, okay, my initial value is 0, max value is infinity, min value is 0. The increment method increments the value by 1, decrement value, well, you see what we do here. We increment it twice, and then we decrement it once, make sure that the value is 1. So this is a fairly straightforward view model test.
The only other thing I would love, I think would be good to test in this view model would be actually hitting those boundaries, trying to decrement it down below 0 or something, and then.
Well, we could add. Let's add.
Or like make it the max 5 and try to increment it.
Yeah, so we could do something like max is 5, and then just say value is 20, and then we just say, okay.
Yeah, value should just be 5.
Unit.equal value is max.
Cool.
Now let's look at this. Our server is still running. So we go back to test.html. I don't know why this stays red.
Yeah,
I think
that's weird.
They did all pass. This is I think it's a live load issue.
Yeah.
If you go to this component test page, it works.
Yeah. Matthew, if you're watching.
So it is all green, and you see down here that our test that we just added sets the boundaries. We can do the same thing for min as well, but I think that's okay for now. All right. So that's our view model, and it's tested. And the only thing that we need to do now that's left is to add Bootstrap, because I'm a horrible designer, and Bootstrap at least makes it look nice. And notice that we're installing it with Npm. This is a DoneJS feature that we're just going to use because we can. And then let's quickly look at this template. Okay, Bootstrap is installed. Now if you look at this template, the stash template is currently just showing the message. Let's paste this in. This is a bunch of Bootstrap. So first of all, we import Bootstrap last.
I've heard a rumor you don't need the bang anymore.
Is that a DoneJS 07 feature?
I don't know. I think it's even 06 feature.
All right, we'll try that in a second. Let's quickly look at the rest. So the markup, a lot of it is Bootstrap, right? There's our minus button, there's our plus button, and there's our value number input. And then there's two things that are CanJS specific. If the value is min, the same as min, then add the disable that button. The same if it's max, disable the plus button. And then on click, call the decrement viewModel method that we just implemented and tested. Here, call the increment one. And this part of the number input value is two-way bound to the actual value of the viewModel. So you can set the number directly, but it'll just update to the min-max value if you add, like, set the wrong number or something. Let's look at this. We have a demo page. The demo page was here. No. And you see all of that already works. Let's change it up a little bit and say max equals 3. This does not, I'm going to talk to Matthew about this. I'm going to update this to make it live reloadable because it currently isn't. And now you see it's max 3 and 0. So this is basically all the functionality that we need. Took me only 20 minutes with talking through it. So that's pretty cool. Any thoughts, questions?
Did you try the less thing? Try to get rid of that less.
The bang.
The bang.
Oh, yeah. Still looks the same, so I think that worked. Nice. Cool, and then this is basically everything we need. It's tested. It's in continuous integration. We'll look at the build in a second. So what we do through GitHub usually, now you saw here, let's look at our build passed. There, it's green. Awesome.
You know, one thing I realized about this example is it doesn't use its own CSS, have any of its own CSS, which this can actually help you with. It's a tricky thing to make a widget because it often has its own styles that it depends on. And DoneJS can also build less to CSS. So if someone just wants to put in, just like you can put in a JavaScript tag to load your widget, it can write out a CSS tag, like a CSS file that you can use to just load your widget. It won't build one out in this case because everything, it only builds out by default what's directly in your project. So even though your project depends on Bootstrap.less, it won't make that part of its CSS export because Bootstrap is in node modules, just like CanJS is in node modules and jQuery is in node modules. So it automatically excludes those things from kind of the script tag build because it assumes people will individually add those script tags themselves, just like what was in David's JS bin.
You saw that, oh, by the way, here we have our nice passing green widget button. Now on GitHub, let's quickly run the test to make sure that everything works. I don't know why it's red. I'm sorry about that. Okay, but it's green here. So 12 tests are passing, 12 assertions. Now on GitHub, we, the first time, push directly, but even if you are working on your repository yourself, it is a very, very good idea to use pull requests, especially when you have continuous integration, because then it says, oh, you made this change, and GitHub will tell you if you can merge that change when all your tests are passing. So what we're going to do is say git checkout component functionality. And then if you look at it, right, this is all the files we modified while creating it. So we add them all, and we commit and say, okay, adding number input component functionality. And then I can just git push component functionality, push origin, functionality. And then GitHub will say, hey, you've just pushed to this branch. Do you want to create a pull request? And it's like, yes, I do. I'm not going to make a comment because this is just for us to keep track of it. And now we created a new pull request. You can look at my changes here, what I just did, right? This is why GitHub is really great for collaborating and working on it, because this is how people would contribute to your plugin as well. So it's just keeping the process transparent. We'll wait for the test to go green. I don't know how long this is going to take. The last one took 3 minutes. So we got to chat for 3 minutes.
That's fine.
But we can actually look at so we made a pull request. We can look at making a build. Anything you wanted to say?
Well, let's run the build while that's going. Let's just prepare people.
So on the build, we just say, you can say npm run build.
Or just node build, I
DoneJS.
think, even, right? It's just a build.
Yeah, but there may be other things that we want to add to this.
Pre-run.
DoneJS build. Let's do that.
So, yeah, what this does... Oh.
It works, but this error has been here for a while.
Oh, it has?
Yeah.
We should get rid of that, huh?
Oh, I agree.
What,
I just saw it this morning when I ran through this, but
is it because of live reload?
JS hint?
Pardon?
Is that JS hint error or no?
I think
That
it's
seems
still
a problem with live reload. Steal.
Oh, it is. Okay, never mind.
Oh, yeah, but it excludes that one anyway, I think. We can look at that later. Basically, it worked. So you can see here we created a... actually, it did build OLS into CSS here and here.
It shouldn't have. What's inside there?
Oh,
Oh,
this
it's that
CSS.
last.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
okay. Yeah, that it should have built.
So it created two things, JS files for AMD and CommonJS, which is the number inputs. So if you look here, this is transpiled, so it's probably going to look a little messy. But it created the number input JavaScript file and the stash template as a JavaScript file, and then the two CSS files.
Okay, so it shouldn't have made it for global it put it all in one.
Yeah, for global,
But for some
it put
reason,
it all.
there's no global CSS. That's kind of odd, actually. It should have made a CSS then, like it made for the other ones.
Yeah.
So we'll have to look into that.
Maybe because it's actually not included here.
No, it's part of the number input JS. It probably loads its own less.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Does it? Oh,
Yeah.
You're right.
So I think there might be a little bug there that we have to look into. But
we have our build now,
Okay.
so we can use this one with require.js, browserify, or just a new browser like we saw in our JS bin.
Can you look at the build real quick? Build.js. Let's look at what that's doing. Oh, because it's just plus global -js. I think it just needs to be plus global. Try to run it again. Remove that -js.
Now I'm getting lots of errors.
Oh, maybe you need to do it twice. Do global -js and plus global CSS as another. I can't remember what the options are. Try that. There's some way to build CSS, and I think it's just not included. Okay, that's probably what it is.
There it is.
Try
Is
it.
that,
No.
that's a steel config.
Yeah, it's a steel config. Okay, so I think we just need to change the generator to include that to make sure CSS is being output.
Okay, I have 2 notes for that. But everything else worked. Let's see if our test passed. That they did, so this is awesome. Let's merge them. Don't forget to delete your branch, or you have a million deleted branches. And this is our final version of the plugin. We just ran the build. Let's see what the last step is.
You're going to have to commit one more time, I bet.
Yeah.
Just because we changed the build.
Well, this is going to be fixed in the generator in a couple minutes. And then the last step, I don't know if we should do that. Publish it to NPM. You just basically say, once you signed up at NPM, you can just say DoneJS release minor, which is the first version. And
what version does it start at?
000. So
cool.
You can do whatever you want.
Perfect.
So we already published this same thing before. So this is basically how we'd use it. Then you npm install.
Can you change your version number so it'll work? We'll just overwrite what you.
No, I can just I can say DoneJS release minor.
But isn't going to say this has already been released?
No.
No?
You can't unpublish though. So before it publishes, it runs the test for us.
And runs JS hint, it looked like, too.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, we wanted to do the publish stuff. NPM did not complete because I couldn't push to master. Yeah, okay. That's fine.
Why can't you push to master?
Because I didn't push what I just committed.
Oh.
I didn't pull. This is even
because you merged. Yeah.
It's even in here to say pull it.
So is the idea you always run this command? Is the workflow, you push, you make your latest master, and then once you've got your latest master, you're going to check that out locally again, pull in anything that's been merged, make sure everything is merged into it.
Well, yeah, you have to be on latest master, so I actually forgot this step.
Okay.
But if you look at this, we have here now our release 0.1.0, and if we go to npm,
because it didn't actually publish.
It didn't.
Oh yeah.
You have to run it again. You might freak out because of the tag. You have to delete the tag.
No, I can just say npm publish, but there we go. I don't know why it didn't like that. I can just say npm publish. Because it's already
But the dist isn't built, though.
Okay.
So it'll just be built without a dist.
Here's what we're going to do. DoneJS release minor again.
Yeah. So
when
hopefully David is somewhat highlighting how hard it is to actually make sure everything is in sync. It's really tricky because you want to only commit to your repository like it's master and your feature branches, your ES6 code that you're actually writing. You don't want to commit all of the built standalone AMD CommonJS version. However, those need to be present for when you actually publish to NPM, and you want those present in your dist folder, your tagged dist folder. So if I tag a release on GitHub, I want dist to show up then. So that DoneJS release minor script tries to do all of that at once. It'll make sure JS hint all of your code, make sure all the tests pass, then it's going to check out a release branch. It's going to increment your version number. Then it's going to build to that dist folder, but check that into your tagged version, push that out to tagged GitHub release, and then also push out the project with the dist folder to NPM. So there's a lot of moving parts to get a really nice release, and this script does it for you. Unfortunately, if you kind of mess up along the way and publish without kind of having a nice clean master, things can get messed up. But
it's in the guide. I skipped that step.
Yeah.
So we made a 0.3 because releases are cheap, and NPM won't let you unpublish things, which was probably a good call. So here we have a version 0.3, and if you look at it, if you say, okay, you want to download it, right? You can download the actual zip file. I don't know where it.
Why did you have to update your package number or like the version in package.json?
Because it blew up before it updated the version number.
Okay.
So usually it does this automatically.
Okay.
So if I'd run, actually, let's do another release because that's a good question. Let's say I fixed the bug, right? Now I can just say DoneJS. So first I'm going to check if my Git master is clean, okay, and then
make sure you have the latest from master.
Git
Not even your local
master, yeah. Because otherwise it'll complain a lot. And then you can just say DoneJS release patch, which is a bug fix, right? And now it'll bump the version for us automatically, which is pretty nice.
That's cool.
Run the tests, do all the things for us.
Do the build, add those distributables to a tagged release, add those distributables to what's published to NPM.
So now if we go to NPM, it'll say, it might take a little bit, but it'll say that 0.3.1 is the latest release. And then if you go to GitHub releases, you'll see there's 0.3.1. What Justin was talking about is you see in the main repository, there's only the source because we don't want to check in our build stuff. But if you go to the actual branch, to the actual tag, you'll see a dist folder, which gives you all of this stuff.
You can see tags another way. The way I always do it is under tree. Tags.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I always find it.
Yeah, you're right. So here, now there are also, people can do, if you add it, for example, to Bower, people can do a Bower install DAFL member input. And that will give the build files that you can use with require.js or anything else.
That's cool.
This might take a little bit to update. Here's all our builds. They're all passing, which is nice. So every time you push a new version, it'll rerun your tests as well. And that's basically it. So there's a lot to it, but with this generator, we figured out a lot of the things that we think are important so that you don't have to worry about it.
And then to use it from a different project, it actually shows instructions on how to do that. As long as you're building, like the default instructions are for kind of a CanJS jQuery setup.
Yes.
Like if you go to the README, I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Like
so,
I'm just saying, there's a lot of different ways. That's a big idea about this. Is like not everybody wants to use Steel, although they should. Not everybody does. But Steel understands that, so it exports these projects, the build, so that they can be used pretty much by anybody in every way.
Yeah. So if you, for example, look at the JS bin, we can, for example, let's do this. HTML, change this from DoneJS to DoneJS number input to what I just published. And then we use version 0.3.1. And let's see.
Should work. Maybe raw Git takes a while to.
Can be dist global. Well, no, it's.
Oh yeah.
There we go. So let's update that. Take out the HTTP.
And you, in reality, you also should add the link tag to the exported CSS.
Yes. One sec. I'm gonna change this. So there's my number input, and then yes, we can up here add a link. What is it?
It'll be the same thing .css as your JavaScript, I think.
If you look at dist global, we didn't add it.
Oh, it didn't get added. Why not? Is it in your dist folder right now?
Because apparently it got lost.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, I fixed that and it'll work in yours.
Sure.
But yeah, that's it.
One other thing I do want to, because I want to, maybe because I'm proud of it, I really do want to highlight how it does make sharing very possible in those other, in Browserify or AMD. So David, if you go open your AMD distributable up. I might need to run the build again. So we're building, we have less file in our app, right? But we actually export this JavaScript here. Open up the JavaScript file. You'll see we even write out so that require.js on line 6, you could see it's CSS bang, and then it's that actual, we write it out so that if you're using require.js's CSS plugin, which most people do, then this will just work, which is awesome. And we do a similar thing with our package.json. I think we should be if we're not, so that the package.json, hopefully it depends on Browserify CSS transform, and if not, we should probably show people how to add that real quick, or add that to the generator. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, we haven't added it here.
So it's not in here.
No.
But if you look at the CJS.
Oh, it's probably.
Oh, yeah, all this gets ugly. So it requires that, but what you need is the bit.
CSSify. But I think it's like the people using it in require. You have to just set it up and it'll work.
Well, you need to add it to this project actually. So we would, if we wanted Browserify to be used, we'd have to add it to our package.json here.
That might have changed because it should just load it.
Before it was like local transforms all have to be local to the project that they're using. At least when I made bit tabs. Maybe it's changed, but here if you look at there's this here I'll share my screen real quick. If you do want this to, if you have styles for your widget and you want them to be Browserify to work, you needed, there was actually, if you wanted old Browserify to work and new Browserify to work, there's 2 different configs where you basically use this transform CSSify, and then it works. And then there was one other, David, are you pointing the main at this location?
We haven't done anything for that.
Okay. So that's the other thing. If you want Browserify to really work, what you want to do is say, hey, if System.js is loading this, well, you're just going to point at the main ES6 module. But if it's Browserify loading it, you're going to point at your dist, the dist location. So if you really want Browserify to work, Browserify will kind of work right now, but without CSS. If you want it to work with CSS, you have to add this. And then if you want it to work, if you want it to
work without having to require that file specifically.
Exactly. If I want to import, if I just want to import like bit tabs, you need this. Or if David wants to just be able to import DAFL, whatever it is, number something, you have to do this. Oh, I probably wasn't showing that here. Let me highlight it a little bit better. There, you have to do these, main and this Browserify. Cool.
Yep. And that's it.
Awesome.
There's probably more to it in the future. The next one is going to be how to create a generator.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. I
Maybe
think
not next week, but the week after.
I think next week might hopefully be Kevin doing how to do dependency injection with Steel. Should be really cool. Cool. Awesome. Thanks, David. Thanks, Julia.
Until next time.
Until next time. Hopefully next week.